Good day, friends. Today I will tell you a story about a man whose name is on the lips of every law enforcement officer in America. His name became a legend, his robberies a mystery, and his identity a mask of mystery. Yes, we are talking about Jacob Black, America's most wanted robber. How did he manage to remain free despite all the efforts of the police? How was he able to break into the country's most secure banks and steal millions of dollars while remaining like a ghost in the dark of night? Let's dive into the history of this mysterious criminal, find out his past, unravel his mysteries, and perhaps reveal his secrets. Get ready, friends, because an exciting dive into the world of crime and intrigue awaits you. This is the story of Jacob Black, the legendary American robber. Jacob Black was born in a mountain village in Idaho on January 5, 1980. His family lived in an old house made of wood and stone, surrounded by snowy mountains. His entire childhood was simple and quiet, but Jacob always had a burning desire for something more. Growing up, he realized that his family was poor and he dreamed of a better life. At school, he did not excel academically, but was charming and cunning. His friends often called him the Shadow because he could disappear and appear in the most unexpected places. As a child, Jacob was a lonely boy. He often spent time surrounded by books and fantasies, dreaming of adventure and wealth. His parents did not like him, often scolded him for his bad dreams, preferring to see him in the future in the ranks of the working people, like themselves. However, Jacob did not want to live the boring life of his parents. He dreamed of freedom and adventure. Over the years, this dream only grew stronger as he watched the arrival of tourists and travelers to the town, whose stories sounded like legends. Jacob's childhood was filled with ideas of great deeds and adventures, and this became the starting point for his future aspirations in the world of crime. Unlike other children, Jacob was special. He had an amazing mind and insight that allowed him to understand complex situations and find innovative solutions. Thanks to his cunning and analytical skills, Jacob quickly learned to look for weaknesses in security systems and find ways to bypass protection. He became more and more confident in his abilities because each successful jackpot brought him not only material benefits, but also strengthened his belief that he was strong and invincible. Thus, already as a child, Jacob began his descent into the world of crime, using his intelligence and cunning to steal and deceive. Using his intelligence and cunning, Jacob began to find ways to obtain money and material possessions to show his family that he was strong and independent. He dreamed that one day they would bow to his success and recognize him as a person worthy of respect and attention. Over time, Jacob reached the age of 18, and so much resentment and anger had accumulated within him that he decided to take action. He planned the perfect revenge. On the night of his 18th birthday, when all the offenders were asleep, Jacob disappeared from home, leaving only a note in which he announced his departure and his intentions. His first step was to rob the offenders' house. He knew all their habits, knew where they kept their money and valuables. Gathering everything he could, Jacob glanced at the house he had once considered hell and was pleased to see that his connection with the past was now completely severed. Leaving his native place far behind, Jacob went to California, dreaming of a new life and new opportunities. This state seemed like a place where he could start over and realize his wildest dreams. Thus began a new stage in the life of Jacob Black, who faced the cruelty of fate and the injustice of the world, but always remained true to his ideals and aspirations. Arriving in California, Jacob quickly realized that a regular job was not for him. He felt that his strength and intelligence should be used differently, in more exciting and profitable endeavors. But to get started, he needed to raise startup capital. Thus began his criminal career in California. Jacob was a master at planning and executing small pocket theft without attracting police attention. He was unsurpassed in his cunning and agility, always one step ahead of his pursuers. Small thefts brought him small but stable profits, which he could invest in planning larger operations. With each success, his confidence grew and his ambitions became greater. Jacob knew this was just the beginning of his path to great things. With a fire of ambition and a thirst for adventure burning in his heart, he was willing to do anything to become a legend in the world of crime. Jacob soon realized that he preferred to work alone. He was his own boss and his own instrument, relying only on his own strengths and abilities. This made him even more dangerous since no one knew when or where he would appear. 6 months later, he moved on to more ambitious goals. He began robbing houses where people of higher social status lived, because he wanted to increase his own status in the underworld. He looked for rich mansions, stole jewelry, valuable jewelry, and works of art. Jacob was a professional at his job. He studied his goals, planned every step, avoiding leaving traces and minimizing risks. Each robbed house brought him not only material benefit, but also recognition among his peers. His reputation as a cunning and fearless criminal only grew stronger, and Jacob was willing to go even further to achieve his goal of becoming one of the best in the world of crime. One day, Jacob targeted the house of a wealthy businessman whom he had heard of as a very influential figure in the city. He conducted a detailed study, studied the work schedule of the owner of the house, his habits, and safety measures. As a result, he came up with the perfect plan. That evening, when the house was empty, Jacob sneaked inside, cleverly bypassing the security systems. He was lightning fast and silent. His movements were precise and confident. Finding a safe containing jewelry, he opened it without difficulty, removing jewelry worth more than $200,000. This robbery was a testament to Jacob's skill and professionalism. He felt the adrenaline of defeating security systems, overcoming all obstacles on his path to success. After this robbery, his reputation in the underworld became even more impressive, and many began to consider him one of the most dangerous and successful criminals. Jacob realized that this was only the beginning of his path to fame and fortune. The police, of course, took Jacob seriously after such an impressive robbery. They were furious that such a fearless and cunning criminal had escaped from them. They made every effort to track him down, conducting extensive investigations and organizing raids, but Jacob was one step ahead every time. He was a master at bypassing surveillance and security systems. He used the most advanced technology to remain invisible and avoid arrest. His plans were carefully thought out, and he was always prepared for any eventuality. For Jacob, it was part of the game. He enjoyed how he skillfully provoked the police and left them empty-handed. This only increased his confidence in his abilities and made him even more ambitious. For Jacob, the moment came when he was tired of limiting himself to petty thefts from the houses of rich people. He wanted something bigger, more exciting, and more profitable. His ambitions required more auditory actions. Thus began his new chapter in the world of crime. Jacob moved on to robbing the most prestigious and wealthy jewelry stores in the city. He studied their security, became familiar with the routes for delivering valuables, and developed complex plans for robbery. Each robbed store brought him huge profits and increased his reputation among criminals. Jacob became increasingly ambitious and fearless, stopping at nothing to achieve his goals. These robberies were not only a source of income for him, but also a way to prove to himself and the world his strength and genius. He became one of the most famous and dangerous criminals in the city, and his name was respected and feared in the underworld. In 2012, Jacob decided to take his ambitions to the next level and move to New York, a city where his wildest dreams could come true. He stalked every famous jewelry store, studying their security systems and locations of valuables. One day he noticed that one of the largest and most prestigious jewelry stores was preparing for an anniversary promotion, during which unique and expensive jewelry would be presented. This was the perfect opportunity for Jacob. He began preparing for the robbery months in advance. Jacob got inside the building under the guise of an employee whom he lured and bribed. He studied the location of the valuables vault, security patrols, and where keys and access codes were kept. On the day of the anniversary event, Jacob quietly entered the building, dressed in the usual uniform of a store employee. He walked up to the vault, picked the lock, and quickly grabbed the most precious jewelry. Under the guise of an employee, he left the store, leaving behind only empty windows and shocked customers and staff. This store robbery became one of the most notorious crimes in the history of New York, and Jacob went down in legend as one of the most courageous and brilliant criminals of his time. The police were shocked. They couldn't understand how Jacob managed to remain free despite all the efforts and resources they put into catching him. Other criminals who committed similar crimes would have been caught long ago, but Jacob remained like a ghost eluding them. The most experienced and best detectives in America worked, but all their attempts to find Jacob were in vain. They followed his every move, conducted extensive investigations, analyzed dozens of evidence, but all to no avail. Jacob was like water slipping through his fingers, and the police could not find a single trace that would lead them to him. This caused great confusion and disappointment among law enforcement agencies. Jacob became a symbol of defiance against the law, and each of his new crimes only strengthened his legendary status in the world of crime. All the police could do was continue to work on his case, in the hope that one day they would finally be able to catch him. The police were not only shocked that Jacob had never been caught, but also at the horrific damage he had caused. After counting the stolen jewelry from jewelry stores, they estimated the losses at a whopping $20 million. It was a blow to the city and its economy. Stolen jewelry was not only valuable items, but often symbols of status and wealth. Their loss greatly affected the reputation and credibility of jewelry stores and left many customers in a state of shock and despair. The police understood that they could not allow such crimes to continue. The pressure on them increased, and they intensified their efforts to capture Jacob. But despite this, Jacob remained untouchable, continuing his criminal activities as if nothing had happened. This situation caused anger and bewilderment among the police and society as a whole. Jacob became an object of desire and persecution, a symbol of impunity and impunity before the law. And his legend as a brilliant and fearless criminal only grew stronger with each new crime, remaining in history as one of the most mysterious and impressive crime stories in New York. After an audition theft in New York, Jacob disappeared without a trace, leaving police and law enforcement in confusion. For a whole year, there was not the slightest evidence of his presence or activity. This caused even more excitement and speculation around his identity. Many believed that he had finally decided to retire or change his identity in order to hide from the police. Others suggested that he simply moved to another city or even country where he continued his criminal activities under a new name. Meanwhile, police and detectives continued to actively search for Jacob, distributing photographs and information about him in the hope that someone could provide some information about his whereabouts. But all their efforts were in vain, and Jacob continued to remain a ghost who disappeared from their sight without a trace. In 2014, Jacob returned, but this time his trail led to Chicago, where he decided to carry out one of his most ambitious heists, the robbery of one of the richest banks in the city. He carefully studied every detail of the bank's security system and developed an ingenious plan. In one of his smartest moves, Jacob decided to use their own security technology against them. On the day of the robbery, when everything was set, Jacob entered the bank, pretending to be an ordinary customer. He carefully placed several miniature devices in the bank's hall that could block alarm and video surveillance signals. When the moment came, he instantly activated the devices, leaving the bank unprotected. Quickly and efficiently, he made his way to the safe, breaking it open using high-tech equipment. He was able to seize millions of dollars in cash, gold, and valuable documents undetected and undetected. After a successful robbery, Jacob disappeared again, leaving behind only mysteries and questions. His incredible abilities and cunning have turned him into a legend, leaving law enforcement agencies both baffled and in awe of his skill. A bank robbery in Chicago brought Jacob unprecedented wealth. He was able to steal no less than $40 million, a sum that would make even the most seasoned criminals choke with envy. After the successful robbery, Jacob was doused with press coverage, and his name was heard in every corner of the country. Law enforcement agencies were shocked by the courage and cunning with which he committed this crime. But even with all his fame and reputation, Jacob continued to remain free, preventing himself from being caught. The stolen money not only brought him incredible wealth, but also increased his status in the world of crime. After robbing a bank in Chicago, Jacob disappeared for 4 years. The police were on guard, realizing that this period of silence carried something larger and more dangerous. They intensified surveillance and operations to capture Jacob in order to prevent him from committing an even more daring and destructive crime. During these 4 years, the police followed every move, analyzed every possible piece of evidence, and expanded their networks of informants in the hope of finding some trace of Jacob. But despite all their efforts, Jacob remained undetected and unreachable, as if he had been swallowed up by the shadow again. This period of waiting was tense for the police, their nerves strained by the uncertainty of what Jacob was preparing and when he would appear on the scene again. They knew that they must be prepared for his every move, and every detailed plan must be revealed before it is carried out. But even with all his training and the vigilance of the police, Jacob was an expert at evading them. He remained unnoticed and undetected, and his name continued to hang like a shadow over the city, reminding everyone that he was still free and ready to act at any moment. At dawn on May 4, 2018, Jacob returned to the scene, leading his return to one of the most legendary heists in the history of crime. But this time he was ready to take it to the next level. During 4 years of secrecy and silence, Jacob did more than just rest. He carefully prepared for his return, developing plans, studying technology, and assembling a team of professionals. He knew that this time his actions would have to be bigger and more amazing than ever before. His goal was one of the most guarded banks in the city center, in which not only huge sums of money were stored, but also valuable documents, jewelry, and other valuables. Jacob spent months studying every last detail, bypassing security, studying the building's layouts, and even sneaking inside under the guise of a regular visitor. When the day of the heist arrived, Jacob and his team operated like a well-oiled machine. They entered the bank building by bypassing all security systems, activating hacking devices, and disabling alarms. Quickly and silently, they headed towards the safe, which seemed out of reach. But Jacob was ready for anything. With the help of advanced technology and his incredible intelligence, he was able to crack the safe and seize everything that was there: money, jewelry, valuable documents. They were ready for anything, and no security measures could stop them. The robbery was quick and precise, like a choreographed dance. When Jacob and his team left the building, they left behind only an empty safe and stunned guards. This robbery became legendary, not only because of its sophistication and courage, but also because of its exceptional cunning and professionalism. Jacob once again rose to the top of the criminal world, returning with fame and fortune that only increased his legendary status as one of the greatest criminals of all time. The amount they discovered was an impressive $127 million in cash, gold, and securities. This robbery went down in American history as one of the most ambitious and successful of all time. Jacob and his team have secured their place in legend, becoming a symbol of courage, cunning, and fearlessness in the world of crime. Their disappearance after the robbery left law enforcement in a state of complete bewilderment, and their name became a symbol of genius and audacity. After this robbery, Jacob was not seen again. He disappeared as if the earth had swallowed him. But the police knew that he was out there somewhere, in the shadows, preparing for his next move. They realized that Jacob was no longer acting alone. His success in heisting a $127 million bank led to speculation that he had his own team, which meant an even greater danger to society. The police worked tirelessly, but Jacob was like a ghost, escaping their sight. They conducted extensive investigations, spied on Jacob's potential allies, intercepted his communications, but every time he remained one step ahead. Weeks and months passed, but Jacob did not appear on the horizon. The police knew that his shadow hung over the city, ready to collapse at any moment. And although public attention to his case gradually faded, the police remained on guard, ready for the moment Jacob stepped into the forefront again. Jacob, given his greatness and audacity in robberies, inevitably entered the top 10 most wanted criminals in America. His name became a symbol of unshakable courage and genius, and his robberies became a legend, frightening and inspiring at the same time. Every step Jacob took caused awe and concern among law enforcement agencies, as they realized that this man was capable of anything to achieve his goals. Police and federal agencies were more alert than ever and kept constant pressure on their investigators to catch Jacob. They knew that every minute he spent free could bring another robbery or, even worse, murder. But despite their best efforts, Jacob remained eluding them like a ghost planning his next moves from the shadows. His whereabouts remained a mystery, and his name became more and more famous and feared by those involved in the fight against crime. Jacob was more than just a criminal. He became a legend, and his story has continued to frighten and inspire generations.